Hello racing fans and welcome back for the week 8 of the Clutch Kickers Gr3 Racing League. This week brings us to the epic Lago Maggiore track, which is a fast-paced, sweeping corner after corner. Everything links together. It's a beautiful track to drive. We're doing 30 laps in daytime dry conditions, but we'll take a moment to quickly go through our qualifying order. Now, before I start here, again, unfortunately, we did have server connection issues, so everyone's qualifying laps got deleted, and it is random and grid start. But you'll notice that just like last week's random and grid start, there's a couple of people that are in roughly the same position they were in last week's random grid start. So it raises the question of, is it really random? I'll let you decide on that one. But either way, we'll go through the grid order real quick. We've got John Citizen sitting in P1, Smooth Vintage, who is a new addition this week, who goes by the name of Boothie on the leaderboards, which his in-game name will be updated to save any confusion. So just bear with us on that one. But yeah, Smooth Vintage in P2. And then we've got Rudsy in P3, Kiwi and Oz sitting back in P4, Hoo-Ha in P5, Toe Cutter in P6, CC21 in P7, Velicor sitting back in P8, Josh H sitting in P9, Pete Man in P10, Aaron Thompson all the way back in P11, and Vital Philly taking up the back of the grid in P12. But without further ado, ladies and gentlemen, let's get racing. As we start the countdown now, we'll follow John Citizen on his launch. 3, 2, 1, green flag, and they're away. Most of the grid seems to get away well. It looks like Velicor in the back, though, has had a relatively bad launch, which is a little unfortunate. That's going to cost him. He could have potentially jumped a start there, but John Citizen leads the way into the first set of chicanes here with Smooth Vintage in P2. It looked like Hoo-Ha was potentially peeking around the outside and maybe thinking about an overtake, but couldn't quite get the job done. But for now, Smooth Vintage does hold on to P2. We've got Rudsy sitting back in P4, followed closely by CC21 and Toe Cutter right on his tail. And I tell you what, just between you and I, Toe Cutter's livery is simplistic but beautiful, just like the man himself. Aaron Thompson sitting back in P7. Velicor, who did lose a couple of positions on his grid launch, has managed to make his way up into P9 already, which is great to see. And the rest of the grid has maintained their starting positions. But John Citizen, about halfway through lap 1 now, still manages to maintain P1. And we'll actually take a look at a replay of Velicor's launch here and see exactly what happened. And as you can see, he has unfortunately jumped a start there, which has given him a penalty and allowed about 3 cars to overtake him. So he's gone from I think it was P8 or 7 or 8 back into P11, which is a little unfortunate. But that is racing as the grid comes through the fast sweeping hairpin now. Hoo-Ha still sniffing Smooth Vintage's rear end here, seeing if there's an opportunity, waiting for a potential mistake. As we've got Rudsy and CC, Toe Cutter. Rudsy, CC, Velicor and Toe Cutter all really close right now. Velicor's managed to overtake Toe Cutter in the last couple of corners there, move his way up into P6. We've got Aaron sniffing around on Toe Cutter now, seeing if there's potential opportunity for an overtake there. But as you can see, as we're coming to the last corner of lap 1 now, and the grid from first all the way back to 8th position is neck and neck, which is fantastic, absolutely epic. And we finished lap 1 here, ladies and gentlemen, with a relatively clean one, pretty accident-free, which is nice to see. There was an incident with Pete Man on lap 1. We've got the replay here. We'll take a quick look at that. And as you can see, he's just taken a little too much curb, spun the car sideways, ended up in the grass, and that is unfortunately going to cost him quite dearly. He's got a bit of ground to make up for that one. But yeah, they come to the end of the first sector here, down into sector 2. And you'll notice that most of the grid gets relatively late onto the brakes into this corner. And Smooth Vintage potentially looking for an overtake on John there. Can't quite manage to get the job done. There was a little bit of contact. But Smooth Vintage has run really wide in that corner, potentially due to the contact, which has given Hoo-Ha an opportunity to overtake him. So Hoo-Ha moves up into P2. That's a beautiful overtake by Hoo-Ha there. Smooth Vintage, one little mistake, and with how stacked the grid is right now and how close everyone is, could potentially cost you a couple of positions. He nearly lost more than one position there, but managed to maintain P3 for now. We've got Rudsy right on the rear of him, though, potentially looking for an overtake as we come down into the fast sweeping hairpin here. Velicor sees an opportunity, goes right up the inside of CC21 and Rudsy here. A little bit of contact with Rudsy, but to be fair, CC and Rudsy did leave that door open for him. And as they say, rubbing is racing. That is a fair and legitimate overtake. But yeah, beautiful move by Velikor there, up into P4, which does put CC21 back in P5 and Rudzy back in P6. And Aaron right on the rear end of Rudzy as well. So I imagine that this race is going to be pretty much like this from start to finish. And I am going to struggle to keep up with the action, but I'll do my best. We'll see what we can do. So we've got Pete Man and Josh H having a really epic battle back here. Mind you, this is the battle for last position, essentially. But Josh H trying to move up into P11 and make a move on Pete Man. And we'll keep an eye on this. But for now, let's move back to John, who is still sitting in P1, 3 laps into the race, been leading for 3 laps now, as Hoo-Ha potentially could make a move up the inside of John here, but John does get a relatively good corner exit and manages to maintain the lead of the race for now. But it'll be interesting to see just how long John Citizen's able to hold off Hoo-Ha here. And the longer he is able to hold off Hoo-Ha, the more opportunity the rest of the grid has in order to make up that little bit more ground. And we've got Velikor sitting back in P4 now, looking at potential moves on Smooth Vintage. And I must say, that livery that Smooth Vintage is running on that Beetle is absolutely beautiful. I'm a big fan of that. Beautiful livery, mate. And yeah, it's coming through the high-speed sector now, sector 2 of the track on lap 3. And again, the grid is just absolutely stacked neck and neck at the moment. I tell you what, with how close the racing is from position 1 all the way back into position 7 at the moment, if any one of these guys was to make a mistake, it's going to cost them very dearly, as Hoo-Ha goes up the inside of Smooth Vintage on that corner there. Seems to be a favoured overtaking position for Velikor. He's pressuring a lot of the guys to go wide in these sweeping hairpin corners and taking advantage of that by them leaving the inside line open. So setting up his overtakes and capitalizing on them absolutely beautifully. But Velikor, in the matter of 3 laps, has gone from P11 after his bad launch all the way up into P3 already, and is catching Hoo-Ha and John. So already into the podium and battling. Great stuff. It's really awesome to see as well that when we are forced to do these random grid starts, the faster guys, with how clean everyone in the grid is able to race, the faster guys aren't really jeopardized too much by that. As Velikor looks up the inside of John there, is he able to get the job done and secure P2? He is. John unfortunately runs wide in that corner, giving Velikor the opportunity to take the inside line. And again, beautiful overtake there by Velikor, as we've got Hoo-Ha now up into P1, Velikor in P2, John Citizen in P3, with Smooth Vintage in P4 right behind him looking to make overtakes. CC21 in P5, Rudzy sitting in P6, and Aaron Thompson sitting in P7, with Toe Cutter back in P8. And Toe Cutter's got a bit of breathing room with himself now, both in front and behind. So it looks like the top 8 positions in this race are starting to break away from the lower 4 positions for now. But the lower 4 positions, I tell you what, they're not alone. They're battling amongst themselves. We've got Vital Philly having a pretty epic battle with Kiwi and Oz at the moment, and then Pete Man and Josh H still neck and neck, lap after lap. As we go back to the leader now, who is currently Hoo-Ha, coming down into the fast sweeping corner here. It'll be interesting to see if Velikor looks to make another move. He's a little too far back, unfortunately, so doesn't look like he is going to do it. We've got a couple of replays from lap 4 to check here, as we've got Hoo-Ha's overtake on John Citizen coming into the first 2 corners here, and John just goes a little wide, leaving the inside line open, which gives Hoo-Ha the opportunity to overtake him. And then we've got Rudzy's overtake on CC21 here, as they go side by side down into the fast sweeping hairpin. Rudzy with the inside line, and CC with nowhere to go but take the outside line. He gets on the brakes a little early, slots in behind Rudzy, and that is a beautiful overtake by Rudzy there. Great job, mate. As we go back to the live action replay now, and CC21 getting a little sideways in that corner there. A little bit of Tokyo Drift action, does manage to hold on to his position there, and unfortunately Toe Cutter has spun on the last corner there, which is going to cost him very dearly. It does look like he's going to be able to maintain P8 due to the gap he had over himself and Philly, but that has really cost him and put him out of contention for the battles between Aaron Thompson and CC21 for now. It is still really early in the race, so he has plenty of time to make up ground, but that's quite unfortunate, mate. As we go through the top couple of positions now, we've got Hoo-Ha breaking away slightly out in P1, followed by Velikor. Both Hoo-Ha and Velikor have broken away a little from the rest of the pack for now. And then we've got John Citizen sitting in P3, and he's had a beautifully clean race as well. You know, he has lost a couple of positions, which is a little unfortunate, but I don't think he expected to hold on to P1. I'm sure he would have been fighting for it, but there is a couple of faster guys in the grid, and once they get on your tail, it's really, really difficult to keep them behind you. And he's followed by Rudzy back in P4 and Smooth Vintage back in P5. As Aaron Thompson makes a move on CC21 in that sweeping hairpin. It looks like for most of the grid, that corner is absolutely the prime overtaking position. As Aaron Thompson moves up into P6 on lap 5 here, followed very closely by CC21. And this is amazing. I knew this race was going to be close, but I tell you what, this has been absolutely epic. And Rudzy cruising around in P4 as he comes around the last corner now. And Rudzy's got a beautiful line in that corner. Able to get on the throttle really early and potentially make up a lot of time. In the Toyota FT1 VGT with an absolutely cracking livery. Looks great. And on board with Smooth Vintage now. And as is tradition in our league, any of the newer guys, we like to do a little bit of an onboard ride with them. So we'll join Smooth Vintage in the cockpit here. I'll mute the microphone and we'll listen to the power of this Beetle and have a look at a couple of the lines that he takes through this track. Oh, that was a little hairy there. You can see him having to back off the throttle a little as the rear end of the car started to slide out slightly. But most of the guys, if they get their line right, they're able to take that sequence of corners at full throttle, which is awesome to see. Once you link those corners together and get it right, it's just absolute. It feels amazing to drive. It's such a beautiful track. As we've got CC21 back in P7, has somehow managed to pick up a half a second penalty. I'd say he's probably cut one of the corners back in either Sector 1 or Sector 2. So he will have to serve that at some point. And again, Toe Cutter has managed to break away a little from Vital Philly after his incident in the last lap. So hopefully he is able to keep it clean and make up a bit of ground to these other guys ahead. But Smooth Vintage, Aaron Thompson, and CC21 absolutely all neck and neck at the moment as each of them slips into the person ahead in order to grab as much slipstream and extra acceleration as they possibly can. But we'll go on board with Aaron Thompson for a little bit here. As you can see, CC21 up there in his rear vision mirror, just peeking in every corner, looking for an opportunity. And Aaron Thompson doing the same with Smooth Vintage ahead of him. As they come down this straight now into the sweeping corner, and again a little late on the brakes, down into second gear, hug the inside and slam that throttle for the corner exit. And I tell you what, he gets an absolutely beautiful corner exit there, makes up quite a lot of time on Smooth Vintage ahead of him, and gives himself a bit of breathing room with CC21 behind. And they're on the brakes into the first corner here, and if Aaron can get this line right, he should be able to full throttle this entire section and taking absolutely maximum curb on all these corners. And as you Aaron has nailed that section, and as you can see, he has made up quite a lot of room on Smooth Vintage as he goes on the inside of Smooth Vintage here, down along the straight as they enter the sweeping hairpin corner here, and Aaron's ahead before the corner, making the overtake, moves him up into P5, and that's a beautiful overtake by Aaron. Great job there, mate. Beautifully done. As we go and follow Rudzy now, he's approaching the rear end of John Citizen. Getting that little bit closer, putting the pressure on. But John's had a fantastic race so far, keeping it clean, keeping it consistent. And he's absolutely not going to make this easy for Rudzy. As they come around the last bend now, Rudzy will slip into the slipstream of John here. It'll be interesting to see if he's able to get that extra acceleration and make a move on him. Not quite able to get close enough just yet. But the acceleration of the Aston Martin along these straights is absolutely phenomenal. As unfortunately, John makes a mistake there and ends up sliding the car on the corner exit into the grass, which does give Rudzy an easy opportunity to overtake. So that is quite unfortunate. That did cost John a couple of seconds there. It's given Aaron and Smooth Vintage both the opportunity to make up quite a lot of ground on him as well. So that is very, very unfortunate, as we've got Hoo-Ha cruising around in P1 at the moment. He does have the fastest lap of the race at the moment as well, with a 154.9. But I'm sure, again, that unfortunately the deltas don't show, but him and Velikor are approximately 3 seconds apart at the moment, have been for the past couple of laps now. And again, it's one of those scenarios where the gap's not extending, but the gap's not closing. Their lap times are just so similar. As we've got a couple of replays to check out from lap 7 here. This is a replay of the overtake between Aaron and Smooth Vintage here, and as you can see, just got up alongside him along the straight. Was able to maintain the inside line into the hairpin there and made the overtake relatively easy, sorry. And then we've got an incident with Pete Man and Josh here. As you can see, Pete Man cuts across in front of Josh. Granted, that was Pete Man's line in the corner, and that has resulted in a very, very unfortunate incident between Pete Man and Josh there, which has sent Pete Man off the track spinning. And I imagine that incident will likely be investigated by the post-race incident control. As Hoo-Ha comes around the last corner now to finish his lap 8 of the race, and Velikor a couple seconds behind him now, followed by Rudzy. So it looks like the gap between Hoo-Ha, Velikor and Rudzy, the split between them is about the same the whole way around. So they're currently lapping approximately the same. But while I've got Rudzy on the spotlight here, let me just say what a fan-bloody-tastic race he is having. Up into the podium positions, up into P3. He's been an absolute superstar in all of the practice sessions and everything all week. He's shown significant signs of improvement. So Rudzy's gone from a midfield contender to what could very well be a podium contender in the next couple of races of this league, which is just amazing. It's so good to see their skill and their talent progressing as the weeks go on. But Rudzy could very well be on for his first podium finish of the league here, which would be awesome. And we've got John Citizen sitting back in P4, followed closely by Aaron Thompson. And Aaron will be pushing in order to close that gap as much as he can. Aaron has given himself a bit of breathing room between himself and Smooth Vintage behind. And CC seems to have dropped off a little as well, which is a little unfortunate. I'm sure he'll be pushing to make up that time. CC21 is running the WRX on this track, so it's a bit of an interesting choice. Normally, you'll notice that most of the grid has picked cars that have a lot of high-end acceleration. This track, it's probably you're probably full throttle anywhere between about 65 to 70% of the track. So you're able to really make up a lot of time by picking a car that has extremely high-end acceleration and top speed, which unfortunately, to my knowledge, the WRX does not. But for the time that he loses potentially on the straights, he could absolutely be making up in the corners, as the WRX is an absolute weapon through the mid to low speed corners. As he gets the rear wheels on the grass there, doesn't really cost him too much, but as you can see, he's just in these corners alone, he's able to make up quite a lot of ground on Smooth Vintage ahead of him. And we've got a couple of guys making their pit stops now as Rudzy comes in at the end of lap 9 for his stop. So I think it would be relatively safe to assume at this point of the race that Rudzy is on a two-stop strategy, and Smooth Vintage also coming in at the at the end of lap 9 for his stop. So it would appear that these two guys are probably running the same strategy. And Rudzy's teammate Toe Cutter in the CKR Blue team also pitting at the end of lap 9 there. So these guys are quite clearly sharing strategies and potentially sharing setups, doing what they think is best for the team in order to potentially maximize their points earnings for the week. And yeah, Hoo-Ha still cruising around in that Genesis X. Again, one of the most, I think, underrated Group 3 cars in the game. And it is a beautiful car to drive as well. So easy to drive, handles absolutely beautifully with exceptional top speed. It's I'm actually really surprised that he is currently the only one in the league that is using that car. It's very surprising, but it is what it is. I think everyone's just growing comfortable with the cars that they drive for now. So yeah, but as you can see, the Aston Martin DBR9 is a very popular pick throughout the grid in this league at the moment. And for good reason. It is a fantastic car. It doesn't handle the best with the stock tune. You do have to tinker with it a bit, but once you get the settings right, it is a weapon. As we've got John Citizen and Aaron Thompson having a really close and epic battle here. Fantastic to see. John does put the tyres on the dirt a little there. It doesn't cost him too much, unfortunately. Well, I say unfortunately, it's probably better for him. But yeah, it doesn't cost him too much. And Aaron is close enough to be potentially, well, not potentially, but definitely benefiting from the slipstream of John through these corners as they come around the last bend here onto the home straight. And it looks like maybe both of them pulling into the pits there, as well as Velikor. So we've got 4 guys in the pits at the end of lap 10 here. Velikor, CC, Aaron Thompson, and John Citizen. And Hukar is still cruising around the track. So after these pit stops, Hukar will probably be close to 50 seconds ahead of these guys. But obviously he will have to make a pit stop at some point. It'll be interesting to see though if Hukar stretches it out to at least 15 laps and is able to do a one-stop as he was able to do at the Deep Forest race as well, which ended up being the race-winning strategy and winning him that race. Absolutely maximizing the amount of curb he can use on these fast-paced corners through Sector 2 here. You're able to make up so much time by attacking those curbs. And really, it's almost strange, really, driving through that sector because you're able to attack the curbs so much that it almost feels like it should be a time penalty. But realistically speaking, the track limits through that sector is so forgiving that, yeah, you can almost cut the curbs entirely and you get absolutely no penalty for it. So it'll be interesting to see if the developers update that at some point because it almost feels like it's too much. But we've got Vital Philly sitting up in P2 at the moment. So with the 4 guys pit stops last lap, he's able to make up a lot of positions. But we've got Velikor, John Citizen, Rudzi, and Aaron Thompson have all exited the pits now after their first stop. And they've exited the pits all really close to each other as well. So again, after the first round of pit stops, the racing action has definitely not slowed down, which is great to see. We actually changed a couple of the league lobby settings this week in order to potentially try and encourage more close and more intense racing. We lowered the fuel usage and we turned up the tyre usage. So, and that has proved to lead to some much more intensely close racing as Hukar comes in at the end of lap 11 here for his first stop. So it looks like pretty much the entire grid at this stage could potentially be on for a 2-stop strategy as he fills his tank, puts a bit of fuel in there, and he'll be away just shortly. But we've got Velikor and Vital Philly here having an epic battle. It'll be interesting to see just how long Vital Philly is able to hold off Velikor. Velikor in the much quicker car with the much quicker lap pace as well. So it'll be interesting to see if Vital Philly even bothers trying to hold him up. He likely will, but currently Vital Philly is sitting in P1, which I think is the first time in the league, so congratulations Vital Philly, and it was short-lived. Velikor manages to overtake him through that corner there. But that's a solid effort by Vital Philly there, mate. Good battle. And we've got John Citizen sitting back in P3, followed very closely by 3 guys behind him. Huha's managed to pull out of the pits in P4, so after the first lot of pit stops Hukar has actually come out far worse than majority of the other guys, which is quite unfortunate. I think the later pit stop by Hukar there could have potentially cost him track position, which has given Velikor the opportunity to take P1 after the first lot of stops. And with the battles going on behind him between Vital Philly, John Citizen, Hukar, and Rudzi and Aaron, if Velikor was able to keep it clean and push as hard as he can, he could potentially give himself quite a significant gap over the rest of the grid here. As this condensed field comes down into the fast sweeping hairpin corner here. about the midway through lap 12 now. And we do have a couple of replays to check out here as well. So this is a replay of Velacor's overtake on Vital Philly in the first two chicane corners. He's able to get up the inside of him as Vital Philly goes wide there. And he's ahead of him into the next turn and sweeps over in front of him. That's a great overtake by Velacor there. And it looks like... no, sorry. I thought Aaron was potentially going to make an overtake on Rudsey there, but not quite. And again, all of these guys just absolutely maximizing the slipstream as Rudsey takes a peek around Hoo-Ha there. He's potentially going to go for it, but unfortunately, Hoo-Ha's a little late on the brakes there, allowing himself to maintain that track position. And we've actually got a replay. Hoo-Ha did have a little bit of an incident on lap 12 as he runs wide in one of the corners about halfway through his lap and ends up in the wall. Doesn't cost him too much. He's able to maintain track position, but Aaron Thompson and Rudsey there almost making contact, thankfully due to the ghosting. That was a contact-free incident, but they did technically go through each other. And as you can see, Vital Philly is starting to fall back a little now as he unfortunately runs wide in that corner, giving Aaron Thompson the opportunity to overtake him there. And Rudsey and Aaron, as Vital Philly potentially making a move on the inside of Aaron Thompson here. Hasn't quite got the pace, isn't able to get it done right now. As Hoo-Ha chases down John Citizen here, as they come down into the high-speed straight into the sweeping hairpin here. Hoo-Ha not quite close enough to make a move on John Citizen just yet. It looks like Aaron Thompson, yeah, again, not quite close enough to make a move on Rudsey. But what epic racing this is. Absolutely phenomenal battles. And we'll check out what's been happening at the back of the grid. We've got CC21 currently sitting in P7, followed by Kiwi and Oz in P8. As Kiwi goes a little deep on that corner. Manages to avoid getting a penalty though, which is nice, but does put the wheels on the grass, which would have jeopardized his corner exit and given Smooth Vintage here an opportunity to make up a couple of seconds on him. And Toe Cutter getting a little squirrely out of those corners. He's sitting back in P10 at the moment, so he's currently out of contention for points. But I think there's a couple of guys ahead of him that haven't made a pit stop yet, so when they do stop, he'll be able to make up quite a bit of time. And then we've got Josh H and Pete Man rounding off the back end of the grid. But we'll go back to the race leader now, Velacor. And as I said earlier, due to the battles that are going on between the positions behind him and the free air that he has ahead of him at the moment, he has been able to maximize his lap times and pull away quite significantly. So Velacor's got approximately, I'd say, about a 4 to 5 second gap over both second and third position at the moment. But it looks like Hoo-Ha has been able to overtake John Citizen and secure P2 for now. As we come to about the halfway point and through the high-speed sector of lap 14 here, we actually do have a replay of an incident that Aaron had on lap 13. So let's check that out. As you can see, they're coming down into one of the high-speed hairpins here. A little late on the brakes by Aaron. He manages to make contact with Rudsey, sending Rudsey into an absolutely epic slide. He manages to keep it together though. Now, as you can see, Aaron definitely backed off the throttle there, realized that he made a mistake, didn't try to go for the overtake, and just made sure that Rudsey was able to recover from that mistake. But that's some beautiful recovery effort by Rudsey there. Top job, mate. Well done. And as you can see, Aaron Thompson and Rudsey having an absolutely epic battle for P4 here. Aaron Thompson weaving around behind him, looking for any opportunity he can get, which is fantastic to see. But he's not able to make the move. Rudsey's pace and Rudsey's lines into these corners. Absolutely phenomenal defensive driving by Rudsey. And he has allowed a little bit of breathing room so he can wipe the sweat off his brow as they come through the final corner now into the home stretch. And as you'll notice, the home straight on this track is relatively short, so you don't really get a really great opportunity to make any passes. But Rudsey attempting his one defensive maneuver in order to break the slipstream slightly of Aaron there. And we've got Vital Philly heading into the pits now at the end of lap 14. And we'll take a moment as we reach the halfway point of the race now to go through the grid order, as again, most of the grid would have made their pit stops by now. But we've got Velikor happily and comfortably cruising around in P1 for now. And again, extending that lead as much as he can. And followed by Hoo-Ha in P2, currently probably around 6 seconds behind him. Followed by John Citizen, who's had a phenomenal race in P3. So he is in very strong contention for a podium finish at the moment. And I'm sure that Roadrunner decal on the back end of his car there is definitely giving him the extra speed he needs. Followed by Rudzy in P4 and Aaron Thompson in P5. And these guys have just been neck and neck the entire time. I'm sure Rudzy at this point is looking in his rear vision mirror every 3 seconds just thinking, what do I need to do to get this guy off my ass? As Aaron looks like he slammed the brakes on there in order to avoid contact with Rudzy. So looks like Rudzy is very, very early on the brakes in that corner there, which is a little difficult for Aaron to adjust, because Aaron would obviously have his brake marker picked out and know exactly where he needs to brake. But Rudzy's brake marker for that corner looks as though it's much, much earlier, which is forcing Aaron to get onto the brakes much earlier. In saying that, though, if Aaron is able to make himself aware of the fact that Rudzy is braking early into that corner, he could potentially swing his car over to the inside line and get on the brakes that little bit later and look for a move. But Rudzy has had a phenomenal last sector on lap 16 here, and managed to maybe make up about half a second on Aaron, which is awesome. Which is beautiful to see. But I'll tell you what, we haven't done a whole lot of, in all of the replays that Rudzy's been with us now, he's been with us for, I think this is his 4th race. We haven't done a whole lot of onboard driving with Rudzy, so let's go on board with him here for a bit. I am going to mute my microphone, and we'll ride out the rest of this lap as we do an onboard lap with Rudzy. And we approach the end of Rudzy's lap 16 here, and as you can see, some absolutely beautiful driving by Rudzy, nice and clean. Great to see. He's really got that FT1 tuned in, dialed in, beautiful tune on that car. Absolutely slammed to the ground in order to maximize the amount of cornering speed he's able to get. But Aaron is still absolutely hot on his tails. As we'll check out the rear end of the grid here, we've got CC21 sitting back in P6, happily and comfortably sitting in a points finish for now. But we are only just past halfway point of this race. Anything can and probably will happen at this stage, so no one's safe. And Smooth Vintage, who's part of the CKR Green team in partnership with Velikor, they are teammates, also sitting in a points finish at the moment in P7. So I'm sure both of those guys would be absolutely stoked that they're both currently sitting in the points. Actually, while I've got Smooth Vintage on the live feed here, let me just say, mate, it's an absolute honor to have you join the Clutch Kickers Racing Esports Club and join into the Group 3 League. You're exactly the kind of person that we want to have joining these races. You know, happy to get involved, great personality, and just a great driver. It's a real privilege to have you here, mate, and I'm looking forward to what you're able to achieve in the later races of this league. He is followed by Toe Cutter sitting back in P8 and Vital Philly sitting back in P9, who's quite a way behind Toe Cutter at the moment. There's probably a good 30 to 40 second gap between those guys. And Kiwi and Oz back in P10 in that beautiful New Zealand inspired livery on the Peugeot. You gotta love an all black car. You can never go wrong with a black livery. As Josh Hates makes his, I believe, first pit stop of the race at the end of lap 16, so he's quite obviously pushing for a one-stop strategy here. As he's running the medium tyres, you would have noticed that majority of the grid are running the soft tyres and going for a two-stop. And Pete Man sitting in P12 makes an unfortunate mistake on the exit of that corner, ends up in the grass, doesn't cost him too much, but does appear to be struggling for grip at the moment, it would seem. So potentially running some quite worn tyres at this stage. I'm not sure if Pete Man's actually made a pit stop. I don't think he has it at this stage. So the fact that he potentially hasn't done a pit stop yet, and then, you know, we're approaching the end of lap 16 here, tells me that his tyres, if he hasn't done a pit stop, his tyres would be well and truly gone. But back to our race leader now. We've got Velicor sitting in P1, cruising around the track very comfortably and able to put in relatively consistent lap times lap after lap, with Hoo-Ha what appears to be about maybe 3 seconds behind him. So Hoo-Ha is putting in an absolutely monumental stint here, and it has been able to close the gap to Velicor quite significantly over the last couple of laps. So it's pretty safe to assume Hoo-Ha is lapping anywhere between half a second to potentially 1 second quicker than Velicor every lap at the moment. But due to the fact that Hoo-Ha did pit, I think it was 1 or 2 laps after Velicor for their first stops, Velicor's tyres would obviously be a little bit more worn than Hoo-Ha's. And we've got Rudzy back in P3, who has unfortunately picked up a penalty. He does make his second pit stop of the race at the end of lap 18 here. We've actually got a replay of an incident with John on lap 18 here, so let's check that out real quick. I'm not entirely sure what's happened here. I didn't catch it, but it looks like he's just run a little wide in that corner, lost the rear end of the car and ended up sideways a little, which cost him 2 positions there, as both Rudzy and Aaron Thompson are both are able to overtake him, sorry. But yeah, a lot of the grid will be making their second stops of the race within the next couple of laps, I would assume. And Hoo-Ha is absolutely gaining on Velicor here. Let's go on board with Velicor now, as he's got Kiwi and Oz right in front of him. Kiwi would have the blue flags waving right now, so I'm sure he will just move over and get out of the way when Velicor gets close enough. As they approach the beginning of Sector 3 here, and Kiwi just pulls over to the side there off the racing line, gets out of the way, doesn't hold him up at all. That's a fantastic job, Kiwi. Well done, mate. And we've got Hoo-Ha approaching the rear end of Kiwi now as well. And I think, as we've seen, it's relatively safe to assume that Kiwi isn't really going to give him too much issues. Coming around the final bend now, onto the home straight. And I imagine Kiwi will probably just pull over to the side and let him by. As Hoo-Ha gives him the flash, lets him know he's there, and that's exactly what Kiwi does. Beautiful driving, Kiwi. Well done, mate. And you would have noticed as well, Hoo-Ha's got some pretty significant body damage to the front left-hand side of his car. It is just cosmetic damage, so it's not going to affect his driving performance, but it would appear that he's probably had a couple of rubs against some walls, or maybe even some other drivers throughout the race. As we go and check out Aaron Thompson, who is currently in P3 thanks to Rudzy pitting on the end of lap 18 there. So Aaron will have to make a second stop I would say, within the next couple of laps, which is going to allow Rudzy, who's currently sitting back in P8, to make up the lost ground from his pit stop. And I imagine the two of those guys will come out after Aaron's pit stop neck and neck yet again, as Toe Cutter makes his second stop of the race now at the end of lap 19. He's currently holding on to a half a second penalty, which would again be from potential corner cutting. But after the second lot of pit stops in the next couple of laps, we'll do a grid order reset and see how the race is looking for everyone's last stint. And Velikor and Hoo-Ha having another absolutely epic battle from start to finish. I reckon these two guys are probably getting sick of the sight of each other as race after race, lap after lap. They're just absolutely neck and neck, constantly harassing each other and battling their absolute hearts out every single race, which is fantastic to see. And it looks like Velikor's actually pulling into the pits here for his second stop at the end of lap 20, which is going to allow Hoo-Ha to go past him into pole position. But again, I don't think Hoo-Ha is going to be able to stretch these soft tyres out until the end of the race, so it's relatively safe to assume that he will make a second pit stop at some stage. And Aaron Thompson also coming in at the end of lap 20, followed by John Citizen. So it looks like the three guys running the Aston Martins are all pretty much on the same strategy here. And as you can see, Velikor, part of the CKR green team with his teammate Boothie, is proudly representing the green CKR logos on his car. Would be great to see the other drivers actually running their team CKR logo color on their liveries. We might be able to get that lined up in the next couple of races actually. The CC's into the pits now. He opts for a tyre change and a bit of fuel. We've got Smooth Vintage into the pits now at the end of lap 20 as well, who is running was running the medium tyres on that sense, so it'll be interesting to see if he puts another set of mediums on. We'll have a quick look at Vital Philly here. He's cruising around back in P8, currently in a points position for now, and he's followed by Toe Cutter, who actually isn't all that far behind him at all. So Toe Cutter's managed to make up quite a bit of ground on Vital Philly over the last couple of laps, which is great to see. But Hoo-Ha cruising around in P1 at the moment with a very, very comfortable lead after the last round of pit stops by the other front runners and midfield contenders, giving himself a little bit of breathing room. But I imagine that he would be pushing as hard as he can right now in order to minimize the amount of time lost by extending his stint before his pit stop here. And the fastest lap of the race at the moment is still being held onto by Hoo-Ha with a 154.9, so no one's been able to beat that. That was set very, very early on in the race. So yeah, no one's been able to beat that since the early laps of the race. And as the race goes on and the tyres get, more worn, it's less likely that lap time will be beaten. And as you can see, Hoo-Ha getting a little slippery, a little slidey out of some of these corners, so I think it would be relatively safe to assume that his tyres are looking pretty bad at the moment. But Velikor out of the pits now, coming around to the end of his lap 21 on fresh tyres and with what I assume to be enough fuel to get him to the end of the race now. This is his last stint, and he will be pushing every single lap as hard as he can in order to potentially steal the fastest lap from Hoo-Ha and minimize the amount of points lost if he isn't able to get the pole position. The person that does secure the fastest lap of the race does get an extra 3 points at the end of the race as well. So theoretically, if Hoo-Ha was to finish in P1, that'd be 50 points. But if Velikor finished in P2 with the fastest lap, that would be 48 points. So it would only allow Hoo-Ha a 2-point advantage over him, which does minimize the losses quite a lot. But majority of the grid order has been relatively reset at the moment until Hoo-Ha makes his second stop. As we've got Hoo-Ha cruising in P1 at the moment, Velikor cruising around in P2, Rudzy currently sitting in P3, followed by Aaron Thompson in P4. And after those last couple of stops, it looks like Rudzy's managed to gain quite a significant track advantage over Aaron Thompson. So I'm not exactly sure what Rudzy's pit strategy how Rudgy's pit strategy, was able to give him such a distinct advantage after the pit stops, but he's probably gained a good maybe 10 seconds on Aaron after those pit stops, which is very interesting to see. And as we can see, Hoo-Ha is coming in now for his second pit stop at the end of lap 22. And he still has quite a lot of fuel in his tank as well, so I'd say that his tyres were just too far gone, and he was losing significant lap time, and he's decided, you know what, I've had enough of this. I'm going to lose too much time if I keep going on these tyres. I'm going to pit now, put in just a little bit of fuel, only enough to get me to the end of the race. And it'll be interesting to see if Velikor, as he comes around the last corner now, is able to retake pole position at this race. It doesn't look like it's going to happen, as Hoo-Ha's out of the pits now. And that is a very, very interesting turn of events. So on the last stint, Hoo-Ha only opting for a very, very minimal amount of fuel. And somehow, Hoo-Ha has been able to come out ahead of Velikor by a very significant margin as well. So right now, there's probably about a 7 to 9 second gap between the two of them after their second pit stops. So Hoo-Ha's pit strategy for this race, yet again, is quite clearly giving him a distinct advantage over Velikor, who could potentially have more pace, but yeah, that's very interesting to see. Very interesting that Hoo-Ha is able to gain a track advantage after the second lot of pit stops there. So Velikor, currently sitting in P2, is going to realize, oh no, I am in a pretty bad position now. Not looking too great for the pole position, and he's going to be pushing absolutely as hard as he can, as you would have seen there, as he gets a little bit sideways through one of those corners there. And we've got Rudgy sitting back in P3. We've got a couple of replays from lap 22 to check out at the moment. There's a replay from Toe Cutter with an overtake on Vital Philly here, as Vital Philly gets a poor corner exit. Toe Cutter just goes up the inside of him relatively easily. No dramas there whatsoever. And unfortunately, we've got another incident with Pete Man here, as he goes wide through that corner, ends up on the grass. He's able to keep it together, but does unfortunately lose pretty significant length of time. And we'll quickly do, after what I can only assume was the last round of pit stops of this race at this stage, we'll quickly go through the grid order for now. So we've got Hoo-Ha sitting pretty comfortably in P1 for now, followed by Velikor in P2, who would be pushing as hard as he can in order to catch him at the moment. And then Rudzy in P3, followed by Aaron Thompson back in P4, and John Citizen hot on his tail. So this is the battle to watch for now, Aaron Thompson and John Citizen. And then we've got CC21 cruising happily back in P6 with a lot of breathing room both in front and behind him, so he's looking pretty comfortable for a P6 result for now. And then we've got Smooth Vintage back in P7, who actually has Vital Philly not too far behind him at all. So this is another battle to keep our eyes on for now. And then we've got Toe Cutter back in P9, who's still in a points finish for now, but Kiwi's a good 30 seconds behind him, so I would say that Toe Cutter's sitting pretty comfortably in P9 for now. And then we've got Josh H in P11 and Pete Man in P12. And it looks like Josh H and Kiwi... no, sorry, just Josh H has managed to pick up a half a second penalty for, again, what would probably be corner cutting. But yeah, what an absolutely epic race this has been. Monumental battles the whole way through for pretty much the entire race, as Hoo-Ha's approaching the rear end of Kiwi and Oz here, as I would assume that Kiwi managed to pass Hoo-Ha as Hoo-Ha made his pit stop. So again, Kiwi and Oz will have the blue flags. He will just let Hoo-Ha through on what would probably be the either this corner or the home straight. And Kiwi pulls over to the inside, lets Hoo-Ha by. Absolutely hassle-free. And again, Rudzy cruising comfortably in P3. He has had a absolutely fantastic race. He's nailed his pit strategies. He's nailed his laps. Very minimal mistakes. I think the only real mistakes he's made has been at the expense of, I think maybe Aaron giving him a couple of little touches here and there. But he's had a fantastic race, and he's looking pretty comfortable as he finishes his 25th lap of the race. He's looking pretty comfortable with for a podium a podium finish here, which again would be his first podium of the league, and very evident sign of significant improvement in his driving ability over the past couple of weeks. And Aaron Thompson cruising back in P4, followed closely by John Citizen. Aaron has actually managed to put quite a bit of breathing room between himself and John in the last lap there. So I'd say John's probably had just a little bit of a slow lap, which has allowed Aaron to pull away just slightly. But it looks like actually Aaron is gaining quite a lot of time on Rudsey lap after lap in the final 5 laps of this race. So if Aaron's able to maintain this pace, there's a very real possibility that he could steal P3 from Rudsey, which would be a major upset for Rudsey. But we'll keep a very, very close eye on that. And it does actually look like Hoo-Ha is pulling away from Vellacore, actually. So, which isn't overly surprising, really, when the pace of these two guys are so evenly matched. The difference in pace really just comes down to whoever's on the fresher tyres, which at the moment would be Hoo-Ha due to the later pit stop. So it's not surprising at all to see that Hoo-Ha is pulling away from Vellacore lap on lap at the moment. And unless he makes an absolutely major or major mistake, he's looking very comfortable for a P1 finish. He actually just beats his fastest lap of the race by nearly a full second. Actually over a full second, as he runs a 1:53.9, which is a pretty quick lap. That's a lot of pace by Hoo-Ha there. So realizing the position that he's in and the potential for a P1 finish, Hoo-Ha would be absolutely giving it his all for the last 4 laps of this race. Now let's go through the grid and check out a couple of the battles that are currently happening, as we've got Toe Cutter and Vital Philly having a relatively epic battle for the moment, as Toe Cutter would be gunning for a P8 finish here. Vital Philly has managed to pick up a half a second penalty, which gives Toe Cutter an absolutely prime opportunity to potentially make a pass on Philly when Philly does have to serve that penalty. But as you can see, Toe Cutter getting the better corner exit out of majority of the corners at the end of Sector 2 there. As they come out into Sector 3 now, Toe Cutter on the rear end of Vital Philly, making ground fast. And we'll watch this for a bit and see if Toe Cutter is able to get the move done on Vital Philly. As they come around onto the home straight now, Toe Cutter in the slipstream of Vital Philly. Is he going to pull out and potentially go for a lunge up the inside into turn 1 here? He's having a look at it, and not quite able to get it done. It looks like he hit the brakes quite hard there, with essentially just giving the position back to Philly. I'm not sure why that was. Maybe he just thought that Philly was going to turn in on him and result in an accident. I'm not entirely sure, but we'll come back to this battle in a little bit. And again, Aaron has managed to pull away from John by what would appear to be about a full maybe 1 to 2 seconds in that last lap, and is quickly making ground on Rudsey. Yeah, no, he is absolutely making quite a lot of ground on Rudsey, and Rudsey would be seeing him in his rear vision mirror now and thinking, "Oh shit, I need to pick up the pace here, or I'm gonna lose my spot." And it'll be interesting to see how Rudsey deals with this pressure from Aaron, as he's not very often in this sort of position where he's sitting on a podium finish, a potential podium finish, with someone gaining on him and potentially upsetting his podium result at a fairly rapid pace over the past couple of laps. I do believe that Rudsey did pit 1 lap earlier than Aaron as well, so Aaron would be on the fresher tyres, but only marginally. I imagine that the tyre wear of both of these guys would be, roughly the same, with Aaron only having a very, very marginal advantage. As we head back to our race leader now, and it looks like Toe Cutter was actually able to make a pass on Philly in lap 26, as we check out the replay here for that. and just goes up the inside of Vital Philly through the high-speed sector there. And Philly just essentially going very, very wide through those corners and making the overtake pretty easy for Toe Cutter. So Toe Cutter moves up into P8. And again, due to the fact that Rudzy and Toe Cutter are both teammates, I'm sure both of them would be stoked with the fact that they're both potentially finishing in the points here as we come to about the halfway point of lap 27 now. And Smooth Vintage cruising around comfortably back in P7. He's got a fairly significant gap over himself and Toe Cutter back in P8. So again, unless Smooth Vintage makes a relatively costly mistake, he's looking pretty comfortable for a P7 result here in his first race with the Clutch Kickers Racing League. So that's a great effort by Smooth Vintage there. Well done, mate. First race in the league and you're already in the points. Epic job, buddy. Well done. And CC21, who's also had a clean race from start to finish, relatively mistake and incident-free. He's going to, what looks like, finish in P6 for now, as he has quite a lot of breathing room behind him and in front of him. And he'll just be happily cruising around for these last 2 laps of his race. And I'm sure he'd be, relatively happy with that result as well. And John Citizen cruising around in P5, coming up to the rear end of Pete Man here. Pete Man would have the blue flags, so hopefully he just lets him by, gets out of the way. John Citizen does have to give him a little bit of a tap there to get by, but that's okay. Relatively clean. And Kiwi and Oz has picked up a 2 seconds of penalties here, which is quite significant. So he's obviously cut quite a few corners in order to accumulate that much of a penalty. But Josh H, who is behind him, is quite a ways behind. So even after that 2-second penalty, he's not really going to lose track position. As Hoo-Ha now starting his lap 29, goes a little deep into that corner, ends up on the grass, but is able to keep it clean and not really cost himself too much track time. And Velikor has been able to close the gap a little bit to Hoo-Ha over the past couple of laps, but not really enough in order to make any sort of impactful difference. As Hoo-Ha is still cruising around what would appear to be approximately 10 seconds ahead of him at this stage. And it is not looking very likely that Velikor will be able to close the gap to Hoo-Ha. So as much as I'm sure Velikor is happy with a second place finish, I'm sure he'd be questioning exactly what went wrong at the end of his second stint into the start of his first stint there that allowed Hoo-Ha to get the 10-second track advantage over him after Hoo-Ha's second pit stop. I think it really just comes down to the fact that due to the fact Hoo-Ha ran an extended second stint and didn't have to put as much fuel in his car, that gave him quite a significant track advantage. So yeah, it is what it is. We live and we learn. But let's check out this battle between Rudzy and Aaron. And it looks like Rudzy is able to comfortably sort of keep Aaron at bay for now as they come to about the halfway point of lap 29 of the race into the sweeping fast hairpin here. That's a beautiful line by Rudzy. Great exit. Straight full power onto the throttle. And Rudzy has put in quite a significant amount of practice for this race during the week, and as you can see, it's definitely showing off. You know, you put in the effort and you get the results. That's just how it works. But what a beautiful race by Rudzy. Well done, mate. Beautiful race by Velikor after his unfortunate bad start. Let's take a look at the replay of his start here. Again, as you can see, unfortunately jumped to start, which gave him a 2-second penalty right off the line. Ended up going from P8 back into P11, putting him in a really terrible position for the start of the race. So after that mistake, I think it's relatively safe to say that Velikor has an absolutely phenomenal recovery drive, leading the race as well for a good 10 or so laps. But it is looking like he will likely finish in P2 here, which, again, after what he's had to deal with in the early laps of the race, is still an absolutely fantastic result. As Hoo-Ha's coming up to about the halfway point of his final lap of the race now. Along the high-speed straight, coming down into the sweeping hairpin corner here. And that's a fantastic line early on the throttle. Beautiful corner exit there by Hoo-Ha. What a great drive he's had. Every single race he does, it's clean, it's consistent, it's quick. And he is absolutely solidifying himself as one of, if not the front runner of the league right now. And he's very rapidly closing the points gap between himself and Velikor as he comes around the last corner of the race now. A little bit of a celebratory weave. Rubbing it in, are we, mate? I see how it is. But he crosses the line now for a P1 finish. Great race, Hoo-Ha. As we go on board with Velikor now, he comes around the final corner now for what will be a P2 result. And again, fantastic race by those two guys. Great race by Velikor. Excellent recovery drive at the start of the race. As we go on board with Rudzi now, Aaron has been able to close the gap to him quite significantly, but they're coming around the last corner now, and it looks like Rudzi is going to be able to maintain P3. So that's a great race by Rudzi. Well done, mate. Absolutely epic effort from start to finish. You had your work cut out for you, mate. I'm sure you were sweating bullets the entire race. And Aaron Thompson finishes in P4, which is still a good, solid points finish. It was probably still maintain his P3 in the Drivers' Championship. And John Citizen finishes in P5, who again has had a great race. Relatively mistake-free. He only had maybe one or two mistakes through the race, which cost him a few positions. But overall, a clean, consistent, and beautiful drive by John. And CC21 takes P6. Smooth Vintage coming around the last few corners now to cap off his first race in the league. And what a absolutely amazing race it's been. Well done, mate. Great effort. Good to see you finishing in the points. Around the final corner now to secure P7. Little bit of a celebratory weave there. Bit of a lights flash. Why not, mate? Go all out. Well done. P7 finish for Smooth Vintage as we've got Toe Cutter and Vital Philly coming to the end of their laps now. And Toe Cutter finishing P8. So points result for Toe Cutter and Rudzi. Great points for the CKR Blue team. And Vital Philly is going to finish in P9, followed by Kiwi and Oz in P10, Josh H in P11, and Pete Man in P12. As we'll take a quick look at the Drivers' Championship points after the end of this race. As you can see there, Velikor still maintaining P1 in the Drivers' Championship with 315 points, but Hoo-Ha less than 20 points behind him now. There's only a 17-point gap between them, which is so close now, so close. So Hoo-Ha rapidly catching Velikor in the Drivers' Championship race after race. And then we've got Aaron Thompson sitting pretty comfortably back in P3 as John Citizen is in P4 on 170 points, followed by Toe Cutter, who's actually managed to rack up quite a few significant points just through race consistency and repeatedly finishing in the points. He's sitting in P5 on 159 drivers' points, and Rudzi, his teammate, not far behind him on 144, but Rudzi is currently tied with CC21 on 144 points. So they're both sitting in P6 and P7 in the Drivers' Championship. And then Pete Man, again, he may not be finishing, relatively high up the grid, but just through sheer consistency and the fact that he's been at every race in the league, is currently sitting on 131 points and P8 in the Drivers' Championship, and he's followed closely by Vital Philly in P9. And then we've got Kiwi and Oz sitting in P11. Braxton Thompson, unfortunately, did have to pull out of the championship, so he was sitting in P10 on 108 points. But Kiwi and Oz sitting in P11 on 54 points. Halesy 80 on 32 points, who unfortunately had to pull out of the league in this race, so he unfortunately won't be joining us for any more league races due to connection issues. He's followed by Boothie 70, who is Smooth Vintage, the newcomer in the league, who scored 30 points this race, and Josh H currently sitting on 0 points, unfortunately been unable to finish in the points finish in any of his races so far. So that is our Drivers' Championship. As we take a look at our Teams' Championship results here, which is a new addition this week. But essentially what we've done is names were drawn at random and drivers were given a teammate. And those teams' points are an accumulation of the Drivers' Championship points combined. So as you can see, Hoo-Ha and Pete Man are leading the way for CKR Red Team on 429 points, followed by Velicor and Boothie, who is Smooth Vintage, the newcomer. They're sitting on 345 points in P2 in the Team Championship, followed by the CKR Purple Team of Oz Eagle and Kiwi and Oz on 316 points. And they're followed by the CKR Blue Team of Toe Cutter and Rudsy on 303 points. And then we've got the Light Blue Team of CC21 and Vital Philly on 268 points. And the Grey Team of John Citizen and Josh H, who unfortunately hasn't been able to score any points in the Drivers' Championship and therefore hasn't got any points in the Teams' Championship just yet. But they're sitting on 170 points. And that is a wrap, ladies and gentlemen. That is the end of this video and the end of Week 8 of the Clutch Kickers Racing League. Join us next week as we head over to the Tokyo Expressway for 30 laps in torrential rain. That's right, you heard that. Torrential rain, 30 laps, Tokyo Expressway. It's going to be epic. There's going to be crashes. There's going to be slides. It's going to be absolutely jam-packed with replays that you will not want to miss. So if you did like this video and you haven't subscribed yet, be sure to do that and you will get notified as when the next replay goes up. But until then, take it easy, drive safe, drive hard, drive clean, and we'll see you for the next one.